Hi, my name is David Manuel. I'm Associate Producer here at Ubisoft Toronto. I've been in the video game industry for 27 years, and last year at the age of 50, I discovered I had autism and ADHD. I'm very proud of that, and I'm happy to talk about it. When I was a kid, growing up in the early 80s, I was really into art and video games, because at the time the ZX Spectrum in the UK just blew up, the Commodore and the ZX Spectrum. So I was into video games. I didn't really think about careers in video games, but I loved art. After I finished school, I did a one-year foundation course. So I think I was about 17. That was great. That was very much art focused, doing graphics, doing textiles, doing sculpture, doing painting. After that, I did a university course in graphic design, but I specialised in animation. That time, this is the late 90s, mid-90s. Computer animation was kind of a bit rudimentary, as you can imagine. I joined the video game industry in '97 as a lead animator. I found that I enjoyed animation, but actually, maybe it was megalomania, but I wanted to I found that directing, working with people was interesting. So I've been with Ubisoft now for 11 years, and said that for most of my career, 23 years has been in production, 51 now, and I've had quite a long career, 27 years. So I have three sons, the twins who are 15, and the youngest one is like a year and a half younger. I started picking up on things. My son will be quite defiant. Well, kids often are, but in such a way that he might stand on a chair and I say, "Charlie, can you get off the chair?" So, "No, you get off the chair." And there's a whole bunch of things where he'll go through a certain routine, brushing his teeth, he'll do a dance beforehand, and there's all sorts of these things just didn't quite add up in my mind. So I talked to my wife, and it led me to investigate. With her knowledge and support, he was diagnosed with ADHD. The people we talked to said it actually could also be autism. My wife always felt that I might have autism, and I thought I was in denial, I think, because again, my impression was, well, I don't have problems with eye gaze. I had such little knowledge, and I did go online and try and search out. Having my son diagnosed, and then I was having trouble at work some ways in my career. I'm kind of an introvert, but at the same time I'm quite driven. It's very easy to be labelled or misunderstood. As you can tell, I'm quite a fast talker, and also people say, "Oh, Dave's quite difficult," or "Dave's quite, gets fixated on things." And to me, this is just my personality. I didn't really recognise that it could be an underneath thing that was happening to me. And that kind of was like a missing jigsaw piece. For me, it made a difference. I found out only last year, so 50 years I never knew. And now knowing, it's made a big difference to me because I can do research, I can understand more myself. I think sometimes I could come across as a little bit maybe abrupt or a little bit lacking sympathy. So having a mentor, I think, has greatly helped me to better understand myself and how I come across. So when people want to try and join the video game industry, the thing is to do your research, find out what companies there were, because often companies want to be reflected. So if you're interested in like superheroes, there might be a company doing superheroes. So don't get too focused on one video game company. It might not be even the first choice. You might want to be a designer, you might join the company as an intern, or you might join as a project coordinator. There's different ways in. So my advice is be flexible. So I've been at Toronto Ubisoft now since 2016. What I find most fun about the job is just working with people. And I've enjoyed working with my colleagues it's a very creative industry. It feels a great feeling being part of a team. It's really enjoyable seeing the end result on the shelves. And some of the projects I worked on and enjoyed was like Watch Dogs Legion. These are kind of AAA products. Also the Far Cry series. And I'm working with colleagues not just here in Ubisoft, but also around the world. Montreal, working with colleagues in India, working with colleagues in Europe. So those are kind of the projects that I've enjoyed working on and have worked on. In 5 years, I see myself staying within the industry. I really enjoy this industry. It's something that I know and feel secure in. But also this industry is changing. It has so much coming into it. Back when I was an animator, it was like mocap, and then we had working overseas with co-dev, and now we have the challenges and benefits of AI. Knowing more about autism this last year, since I've been diagnosed, I often hear the term superpowers, and I kind of get that. It's kind of a nice thing to say. And for me, the superpowers I think I have, tenacious. How can I make that better? how can I make this more efficient, more cleaner? And a lot of people don't think that way. Why would they? They want to make the animation better. They want to make this better. I'm thinking about how do we bring this together and we move forward and we hit the deadlines. That's my superpower.
All right, everybody, welcome to today's webinar, Supporting Neuro-Inclusivity at Ubisoft. We are the Autism and Entertainment group, and just a couple of mentions, you know, during our conference which April 5th of 2024, we had incredible attendance, and many employers and job seekers join us. So we welcome you to the first webinar series. We're going to continue our energy through these series that we're doing, and we're excited to have you. So our mission is to increase employment of work-ready autistic talent in the entertainment industry. We do this by expanding diversity to include neurodiversity, enhancing the autism brand by demonstrating their talents and skills, sharing resources and organizations that can facilitate leveraging this talent, and enabling the talent to successfully navigate their career paths. I am Rebecca Beam. I am the founder and CEO of Zavikon. Zavikon was a proud supporter and sponsor of the Autism and Entertainment Conference that we had in April. Also, on the AIE website, you can see the general session and many of the breakout sessions that happened at the conference. If you're interested, please keep watching for new content that's going to come up on the AIE website, including this webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Pierre Escaich. I hope I got that right. And Pierre is from Ubisoft, and I've had the pleasure of speaking with him and discussing the subject that we're going to talk about today. So I'm just going to let Pierre take it away, because we are so excited to have you here, Pierre. And if we could just start with you introducing yourself and tell us about your journey and what sparked your interest in this work.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm very pleased to share our experience in Ubisoft. But to answer your question, let me introduce myself. My name is Pierre Escaich. As you might recognize with the tone of my voice, I'm French, but I've been living in Scandinavia since 2015. I'm living in Copenhagen, Denmark, working in Malmö, Sweden. Been always working for the video game industry for the last 26 years, and always for the same company, which is Ubisoft. And when I introduce myself, I'm used to say that I am a dad of 3 wonderful kids, and 2 of them have been diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD. And that's how I came to the topic of neurodiversity, because seeing them being diagnosed, seeing them facing major challenges at school, they made me realize that I was myself neurodivergent. Today, I self-ID as ADHD. I'm not going for a proper diagnosis, maybe because I'm too old, 52, I don't know. But they made me realize that I was ADHD too. And when I had this moment of realization, which corresponded in my professional life to a period where I had a burnout, you know, that kind of moment where you face difficulties at work and on the same times difficulties at home. I realized, but hold on a second, I did work with a lot of atypical people at Ubisoft. So that gave me the motivation to try to start an initiative. For me, and we'll talk about it, there is an obvious link between video game and neurodiversity, and an obvious link between entertainment industry and neurodiversity. And I wanted to check if it was true. So the first thing I've been doing, like a bit more than 3 years ago, is that I did launch in my company an employee resource group on neurodiversity. And the idea was to say, okay, let's see if among the 19,000 Ubisoft employees, there's going to be an interest on the topic. And 3 years after, we are almost 600 in this employee resource group from 20 different countries, representing all the neurological condition, whether you are diagnosed or self-ID. We also have caregiver, and we have also perfectly neurotypical people who'd like to be involved on the topic. And that's the spirit of neurodiversity, right? Neurodiversity is everyone. Then if we talk about neurodivergence or neuroatypicality, yes, we're going to talk about autism, of course. We're going to talk about ADHD, about dyslexia and other conditions. So I started with that initiative, and it quickly grew, and it continued to grow. Today, if we look at the video game industry, there's been a study which has been made in UK by UK, which is a trade body of the video game industry in UK, which is reporting that more than 18% of the game developer based in UK self-ID as neurodivergent. And more interesting, 4% self-ID on the autism spectrum.
Interesting.
4%, it's a huge number. It's 6 times more than in any other British industry. I don't need to tell you, Rebecca, Autism in Entertainment, but also all the attendees today, the importance of that number. There's a lot of people on the spectrum who are working in the industry. And this should not come as a surprise. Because if I'm asking you who did create the video game industry, like 40, 50 years ago, geeks, nerds, techies, it's us. We did create the video game industry. Neuroatypical people did create the video game industry because, you know, to develop video game, you really need to think outside of the box. You really need to see the world differently. And it's never ending, Rebecca, but it's as I'm used to say, you know, developing a video game, it's just like playing football on a field which is doubling its size every 10 minutes. It means that when you develop a video game, you constantly need to reinvent the role. You constantly need to create new job, new function. You constantly outside of your comfort zone. So you need different thinker. You need to see the world differently. That's absolutely necessary.
And I like to say you need disruptors and the creative mind. And I appreciate, you know, your comments about self-identification, because oftentimes, you know, we as adults, and I was diagnosed as an adult, don't have the option to be diagnosed, especially in the US, because of the expense of it all. And I love that you recognize those who self-ID at Ubisoft. So, I mean, the work that you're doing has made, I'm certain, such a positive impact on Ubisoft. I mean, can you tell me a little bit about the benefits and the things that have impacted and changed the culture there?
Yes, absolutely. So as I was saying, I started with an employee resource group, but due to the success of the employee resource group, I did propose my company to create a dedicated HR program on neurodiversity, which has been validated about 2 years ago. So today my full-time job is rather atypical. I'm Neurodiversity Talent Program Director, and I'm running a dedicated talent program within our HR team, also in partnership with our diversity and inclusion department in Ubisoft. And our goal, that's the first impact, in fact, you know, of standing up, sharing my story, gathering other people concerned, sharing our story, getting together, raising awareness. We've been able to propose a real work program on the topic because, yes, we may welcome a lot of neuroatypical people in Ubisoft. And I think, generally speaking, Rebecca, in the entire entertainment industry, I would rather say there is a nice representation of atypical people. But we didn't do it on purpose. And we don't have the knowledge, which means that in some pocket of the company, in some teams, everything is happening fine because you have the right manager, you have the right understanding, the right listening, the right experience, where you have a team, a dev team with growth mindset, with an attention to welcome all type of communication mode, all type of thinking. But it's not always the case, because it's not a lack of benevolence. It's usually a lack of knowledge.
Yes.
We both know, we all know the topic, right? Because we're going through it. That's our life.
Mhm.
And we would have met 10 years ago, Rebecca. I'm sorry, I was not aware of neurodiversity. It was before my kid's diagnosis. And I like to say, you know, today my kids have been diagnosed and I realized that I was also a typical ADHD side. It was just like, you know, before I was living in a 50 square meters apartment, and suddenly I found a light button. I click on it, and I realized that my apartment is not 50 square meter, but 3,000 square meters. And I realized it's a whole new world. Another analogy is that when I realized this with my kids, all my reference have been erased. It was just like someone removes the floor, the ceiling, and the wall, and I'm suddenly floating into space. Because everything I've been taught and I've been learned, not relevant. The way to raise your children, to support your children, not relevant. Need to go back to work and reinvent everything. And then by saying that, as a typical ADHDer, I'm completely losing what I wanted, what I wanted to tell you, Rebecca.
The positive impact on Ubisoft, this
Yes,
program, and your
so,
journey. You started out in a different position, and you ended up, you know, running this program and really building it.
Yes, absolutely. And so the first positive impact is this program. The second, and we can talk about it a little bit later, what we're doing, we're focusing a lot on training. That's what I wanted to say, is that we have some great people who knows how to be neuro-inclusive, but we have lots of people who don't have the knowledge, so we want to work on that. Our focus first and foremost is to train people and provide them with tools, one-pager, checklist, to help them better integrate neurotypical people. Ultimately, is to recruit. The second benefit, I would say, that we work hard to raise the awareness on the topic. And you know, when you know nothing, when in your family circle, among your friends, you're not confronted to it, you have no idea what it is. So we did a permanent job of raising awareness, sharing stories. I think that's the most important. I started to share my story, and then shortly after, other people followed. And I think that around us, people, they want to hear stories.
Yeah.
Because you can relate to story, because it's a source of motivation. And we had some very nice stories within Ubisoft where some of our colleagues, and I know some of them are attending the session today, they have been made aware of their neurodivergencies after having seen an awareness event we organized. And then they decided to get a diagnosis and then come out with their diagnosis. Or some people who were diagnosed decided to come out in front of their colleague, in front of their manager, HR, about their diagnosis. So those stories are great. For me, it's a validation of what we're doing.
Absolutely. And disclosure is one of the most difficult things. It's also an exercise of self-exploration, right? And understanding yourself. And when you're able to disclose, you're better understood, right? And you can ask for the supports that you need to be more successful.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the last benefits, and we'll talk about it, it's very difficult to show, but we're talking about the entertainment industry. You know, our work is to create, is to constantly innovate, tell stories in different ways. So we need to fuel that creativity and that innovation. And for this, we need to be able to welcome permanently on board different ways to see the world. This is what makes the content we can deliver to the audience outstanding, you know? Elsewhere, we will always be producing the same game. We will always be producing the same movies, the same TV series, the same books, the same theater piece. Of course, some are doing it, okay? But we know how it ends, not great. But you need to constantly, so I think the last benefit is probably the most important one. It's embrace neurodiversity at work, and what we call neuro-inclusion at work is to make sure that you're going to feed your creativity and innovation in a permanent way.
So, you know, at Zavikon, we're working with companies and we're preaching the benefits, and I argue that inclusivity for all organizations is good, because all organizations today are faced with innovation and needing to innovate. But sometimes it's hard to convince the executives to do it. Like, how did you do that? How did you get them to buy into the program?
Absolutely. First, I cheated a little bit because I'm a former executive. So that helped a bit in terms of connection. But if you don't have those kind of connection, you absolutely need to have some exec on board with you. And for this, I think it's really important to connect with the business objective of your company. And the great thing about neurodiversity is that it's fairly easy to connect neurodiversity and neuro-inclusion to business objective. And you know why, Rebecca? It's because what are the main assets of all our company? It's people. And to be more precise, it's people brain. Neurodiversity, it's all about people, and it's all about their brain and how our brain are working. So I think to convince executives is that you need to bring the topic at the level, you need to connect it to company performance, creativity, employee performance. Being neuro-inclusive, you know, the reason to do it in a private company or in a public organization, it's not to be nice or it's not to be ethical. Yes, of course it is for me, but it's because if you want to deliver successful product and services, if you want to disrupt, to innovate, you need to be able to develop your capacity to gather around the table. If you gather 10 people around the table, you need to have access to the best of those 10 people. And for this, you need to understand how neuro-inclusion works. So if someone in the table is not around the table is not at ease in public, that person should have the opportunity to participate remotely. If someone is more at ease with using their voice and writing, could do that. The opposite also. If some other people are more at ease with more time to think about a problematic, you should allow asynchronous feedback. You know, the best idea for a movie, for a game, might not pop up in the framework of a 1 hour meeting. Maybe the best idea is going to pop up one day after in the mind of someone who just need more time to process the information.
Yes.
So connect to convince executive and companies, you need to connect to the business objective of the company. And in entertainment, it's fairly easy. Our business is creativity. How do you want to be creative if you systematically recruit people coming from the Ivy League, the same people, sorry, I'm not US, but you know the reference in the US.
I hear you, yes.
If you constantly recruiting the same school, the same profile, coming from the same region, the same socioeconomic profile, what you will build, and to take a movie analogy, I will take a Star Wars analogy. What you will build them is the empire and an army of clones. So at the beginning, it's great to do that, because when you create an army of clones, you buy certainty, you know, and you are in control. But the only thing you will be able to plan is the date of your death. In Star Wars movie, who is winning? The Rebel Alliance. What are their ultimate strengths? What are it's in with their leaders and manager. And you know what is their strength? Their ability to gather around the table, around a common objective, a group of extremely diverse people. And they make them work together despite or thanks to their difference. And they know how to play them together. And that's what is neuro-inclusion, I think. And that is the key to convince executive. You want to survive in the modern business world? Well, news for you, you need to be disruptive.
Yes.
And absolutely. To be disruptive, you need to learn how to get the best out of each of your employee. And for that, you need to be able to be flexible, to adapt to their needs, and to fix the work environment so that they can thrive on their talent and skill.
So something you tapped into was what many organizations call accommodation. At Zavikon, we call it success factors. And I believe at Ubisoft, you call it success enablers. So, this is interesting because that's so important and key to what you were talking about is allowing people to have their path, those success factors that set them up to be able to work in the environment effectively and to pull from them all of their talent. And sometimes we find that executives are afraid of getting that wrong or that it's going to be too expensive. And from what I'm hearing you say, it's just allowing people their space to think and do their thing. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great topic, accommodation or reasonable adjustment. So first, I would like to be very honest with you. At Ubisoft, we are pushing with a program to try to replace the usage of the term accommodation by success enabler. We're not done yet. We have some work to do. And honestly, so we are a fairly decentralized organization. So each of our local studios have their own policy. So we have still lots of work to do to progress on that field. But let's talk about accommodation and reasonable adjustment. And here we need to talk performance.
Mm-hmm.
And and you need to look at neuroscience. So, performance, it's a matter of skill, not will, to start with. And the second thing, so I'm saying that because if any one of you is hearing in an annual checking, a performance review, oh, you should do an effort to better write. You should do an effort to speak in public. You should do an effort to be to improve your focus. Well, when you say that to someone dyslexic, someone on the spectrum, someone ADHD, or someone combining the three conditions, well, we can, right? Because that might be where we have issues. So instead of hearing people telling us you should do more effort while we are constantly doing more effort, it's irrelevant. What I need to hear is that I can see, Pierre, you're struggling with that, with focus in my case. Is there anything I can do for you? And here comes the topic of accommodation, success enabler or success factor. An accommodation, it's unfortunately nowadays in the business world easy to refuse to grant. Because unfortunately, in the mind of too many people, accommodation means privilege, exception, and cost. Well, it's time to set up the time correctly. First of all, an accommodation will help you to enable your performance. An accommodation or reasonable adjustment is linked to your need. So the example I'm very often given is that, it's a fictional example. Imagine in your business company, you want to recruit the best singing voice in the world, and you found the ideal candidate, and it's the Little Mermaid, and she's living in my city, Copenhagen. And you recruit the Little Mermaid, and then you tell her, you know what? We're so happy to have you. We're going to send you working with our creative team, and they are all based in Austin, Texas. And you're sending the Little Mermaid in Austin, Texas. 6 months after you pay her a visit, she is depressed. She lost her voice. And she's leaving the company. You know what did happen? The Little Mermaid, to sing, she needs seawater. There is no seawater in Austin, Texas. And if your main competitor is recruiting her and is sending her to Seattle, she will perform because she will have access to the right work environment to support her skill. So accommodation are there to enable performance. Refusing to grant an accommodation, it's impacting negatively the performance of your company. The second thing, let's look at the study. In the US, you have the ADA, you have the Job Accommodation Network, which is doing an amazing job. You have a great study which has been made which is saying that 57% of the accommodation granted in the US are absolutely free of charge.
Right.
They cost no money. So let's talk about those ones. What do you do to put them in place? And you know the secret recipe to have no cost with accommodation is to be flexible, is to listen to the preference and the need of your collaborator. How do you prefer to communicate? How do you prefer to give and receive feedback? How do you prefer to collaborate? And if you are able to cater to those needs and create the right work environment, you just do like the Rebel Alliance. You're creating the condition for them to be at their best individually and connect collectively. And the final result, you know it, you win.
Agreed. And a lot of the accommodations that are, being asked for our success factors are good for everybody on the team. And we argue so often that there's not one person on the team that doesn't need something to help them be more successful. So this is not just I'm neurodivergent motion. This is a motion for all of the people that work on your team. And it's also, you and I were talking about compassionate management, compassion, using that muscle to be compassionate towards your employees and coworkers, etc. And the productivity just increases and the company can grow so much quicker when you're paying attention to the people and what they need to be successful. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think so. Now that the direction where to go, and I can tell you on our side, at least, and like many other companies, we have lots of work to do because there is lots of bias, lack of knowledge again.
Yes.
People doesn't know it when if we take the disability lens, the fact that 80% of disabilities are invisible is not very well known by executive. So you have to explain that first. Then, so they are surprised. And then when you say 57% of accommodation are free of charge, they are also surprised. So there is a big work of education, raising awareness to do so that we can progressively implement that system and explain that, oh, please, accommodation, they are not unfair advantages. What is unfair is to refuse to grant an accommodation when it is really needed. That is unfair. So sometimes as a company, you won't always be able to completely cater to the need because that may require some investment that you don't have for the moment, but at least you need to offer the listening, the understanding, and try your best to find, ways for the people to feel at ease at work and then express fully their talent. This is what is at stake with accommodation. So I like when you say success factor, or we try to say success enabler, because it's all about changing the term of the conversation.
Yes.
It's all about to talk about performance. And in our industry, entertainment industry, to talk about what we're doing, create, tell stories. I want to enable you to do that. What do you need? And let me see if I can cater for your need, because if I can do, then you will be in a great position to create, to innovate, and you will benefit from it. I will benefit from it. So it's a virtuous cycle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the employee retention's there. That's a return on investment. That is when the executives start to see the return on the energy towards neuro-inclusivity. So, with that, tell me about the ROI. Tell me why companies should and must do this.
Yeah. I like to say that there is a business model of neuro-inclusion, and it's fairly simple. The business model is the following one. Neuro-inclusion will allow you to optimize the return on investment in employee talent. If I recruit you, Rebecca, and you tell me that you are highly sensitive to noise and sound, and then if my answer is, Rebecca, we're working in open space, it's noisy, you'll get used to it. It means that I condemn you to perform only at 50% of your capacity. What kind of investor I am if I bet 100 on you and limit your production and creative capacity by refusing to fix the work environment for you? I'm a bad investor. So the business model is really to optimize the return on investment in employee talent. And it comes with the understanding that talent expression and skill expression, they don't come alone. You have conditions, just like for the Little Mermaid. She will sing beautifully only if she is in proximity of seawater. So a brilliant coder, a brilliant will perform only if he's highly sensitive to noise, if he can isolate themselves from the noise. You place them in a noisy environment, they will fail.
Yes.
So that's really the key is start thinking about your main assets, and your main assets are people. Okay, and without people, especially in the entertainment industry, I'm sorry, but you'll do nothing. So now get interested into how this is working in the brain up there, because we have research now, we have more knowledge, right? And we learn many things. We learn that your best interest is to work on fixing the work environment, not on fixing people. As far as I know, we are not a guru leader and leading a cult. We are working in businesses, right? So we're here to fix the work environment. And then you have to understand how performance is working, how it comes. You will discover, for example, that what neuroscience is telling you is that the type of skill where you can progress the most are the one where you are already strong. In management, that is named strengths-based management. So if you're already a brilliant coder, but you have major challenges with public speaking, you need to think twice before asking the individual to get better at public speaking. Because probably your interest and their interest could be to become an outstanding coder or animator or artist. And then if you need them to cover a public appearance, then you can pair them with someone who is at ease with public speaking, right? And that's how, you know, by combining the strengths, again, I will take the reference of the Rebel Alliance, is by combining the strengths, not by trying to create clones able to do everything. Because
and
at
you
the
get
end,
return on investment. You get
exactly.
the returns. And the studies have shown, you know, Accenture did a study along with Disability In that companies who embrace this do have return on investment, do have higher shareholder returns, do have higher employee retention. And it's not just your neurodivergent individuals that you're hiring, your autistic, you know, talent. It's also caregivers. It's parents who care. It's people who have friends, you know, that when they see you're embracing this, they become very loyal to you.
And I would like to add something, Erica, because I think it's important. We talk together about autism impairment, about neurodivergent impairment, about the strengths of neuroatypical people. But I would like to invite you to go back to the original, to what I believe is the original message of neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is everyone. You know, our brain is as unique as our fingerprint. So I think one of the key elements for organization and businesses is to develop their empathy so that they learn how to have neurotypical and neuroatypical people working together. The best ideas, the best creation comes from a group of people who are able to develop their understanding of each other, accept to embrace different ways to see the world, the way to solve a problem, and then that gives magic. So for me, neuro-inclusion is not just, let's bring on board a bunch of neuroatypical people. That's not the point. The point is, let's develop our capacity to bring on board everyone, wherever you come from, and try to cater for their needs so that you can let them leverage, express, and develop their talent and skills and put them together.
I love it. So I'm going to address the job seekers because I know we have a lot of job seekers in the audience today. And, you know, many want to break into the gaming industry, and it's not always easy. If there was a piece of advice that you could give them, what would it be?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I think I'm not going to lie, the game industry over the last few months have not been in a very great spot. So there has been lots of restructuration going through the industry, unfortunately. There is still some job opening, but maybe less than previously. First of all down because it's cyclical, so it will come back. And that will be my first piece of advice, is that when you have a strong interest and a special interest linked to video game, don't drop it. You know, among my colleagues, I know a lot of people who stick to their dream. Some of them are what we call self-made individual. Like I know a few good friends, they've been kicked out of school multiple times. And now some of them are among the brightest artists, brightest programmer. I just want to make clear, it was difficult for them. You know, I tend to think that when you are neurodivergent and you have a job, it means that either you are a school survivor or you are a self-made individual. And that has been pretty difficult and pretty challenging. So first piece of advice, don't drop. Right now, there is not so much job in the industry, but it's going to change. And long-term speaking, there will be more and more jobs. So it's still possible. Look around, stay connected, look at the offer. That's the first thing. Also, you may have already, as an individual, a strong interest in coding, developing games. You may do it on your free time. You may be part of a players community. You may do modding. You may do some artist job. You know, keep it up, continue, build your portfolio, because that will serve you the day you will have an interview with a job company. I hope at least with us, Ubisoft, because we'll look at it. So that's it. Then a last point, a last advice. So I will say it several times, but if you we'll post a link to our corporate website. We have a dedicated page on our Neurodiversity Talent Program. So I strongly invite our audience to go and visit that page. And in that page, you'll find a community to join, to get registered to if you want to receive regular news on what we're doing about neurodiversity from Ubisoft. But also, you'll find a first guide to download. And that guide is named the Candidate Decks. It's a set of advice we gather for any neurodivergent job seeker. And it is absolutely valid for anyone. What do we say in that guide? Well, we try to give you some insight and advice about how to ask questions to your future employer. You know, a modern and real and effective job interview is going both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You as a candidate, you also interview the company, right? And in that guide, we give you some insight and advice about the type of question you may ask that may help you to understand whether the employer in front of you is inclusive or not inclusive. And then if they want you in and they do not show very great sign of inclusivity, be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
If I talk about recruitment, I think that, you know, the recruitment function constantly evolve. If I'm looking at all the HR function, recruiters are probably the people who are the most aware of the changes because they constantly see new candidate competition. So last year in Ubisoft, we trained all our recruiters on neuro-inclusion. So they have all been trained, more than 100 people. And our goal when we do recruitment, it's all about, we want first to do the same type of recruitment for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So the first goal of our recruiter is to make you succeed your interview. We don't want you to fail. because we want to know the real you. You want to know your talent potential. So for that, we train our recruiters so that they are ready to adapt the condition of the interview. You want to remove the camera in an online call? We can do it. We can discuss about setting up the right time in the day for you to have the interview. We can provide you the question in advance. We can help you to go through the interview like our recruiter. So that's a little trick, okay? That's a little secret, but we encourage them when they have the feeling that a candidate in front of them, remote or in a room, is struggling a little bit. Our recruiters, they are encouraged to take the initiative to make a break. You know, like the goal is really to put the candidate in the best condition. So a good recruiter will do that. And then the goal is to focus on skill. Okay? Don't care about the fact you're looking me in the eyes or no, that's not the point. And you know what? We consider we have about 4% of people on the autism spectrum in our company. So yes, we're used to it and it's okay. And some people know, okay, they won't be social like the way neurotypical expect, but it's okay. They are excellent team player, co-worker, when you understand that and you respect those specificities. And the last point about recruitment, I think that's very important. You know, modern recruitment today, it's all about culture add, not culture fit, you know? Okay, I'm going to repeat again the example of Star Wars. The Rebel Alliance is strong because they are constantly able to add new talent and skill in their alliance. And that's what a modern recruiter is looking for. What kind of skill set can I tap into to enrich the skill set of my company? So culture fit, you won't innovate. You won't feed your innovation capacity, your creativity capacity. Culture add, you will. And that's what modern recruitment should be about.
I love that. And I'm going to steal that when I talk to companies. I'm going to steal that. I love it. So I know we have so much, Pierre, we could talk on and on and on about this subject, but I know we have questions in the audience, and I have my colleague here, Natalie, from Zavikon, who's been fielding some of these questions and is gonna throw them out there to you and ask some of these questions that are in the chat. And if you want to ask a question, please feel free to put it in chat. We will try to do our best to get to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I just wanted to share that you've gotten some great feedback in the chat, especially a few people calling out your analogies, loving the Little Mermaid, loving the Star Wars references. I appreciate that myself. I'm a big Star Wars fan. But one of the questions that I see here is, what is the best way to get into the gaming industry, especially when you've been out of it for a while? So somebody who was in the gaming industry might have left, pursued something else, or a gap in their career. How do you get back in?
Okay, I think, first of all, always work on your portfolio if you have a portfolio. You can also have a kind of portfolio when you are a coder, it's possible. That's the first thing. Stay in touch with the industry, with the gaming world, know what are the hottest games, the hottest trends, that's useful. And then, you know, we regularly, as an industry and Ubisoft, recruit people who've been away from the industry for a while. Because it's very interesting, you know, making a reference to culture add, that's interesting for us, because the way to do a video game 10 years ago is not the same way today. It changed. We welcome many new job functions, many new experiences, because basically we ride on higher technical capability with processor and so on. So the fact you've been in another industry might be an advantage, in fact, for you. So be self-assured that you're still relevant for the industry, because what does matter is your skill set. And the fact you've been developing your skill set in another industry, well, it can be an advantage. So stay in touch with the industry, with what's going on gaming. And then when you present yourself, talk about your skills, talk about your portfolio, and talk about how the fact that you've been away from games for a while has helped you to broaden your horizon, help you to, you know, see some work problematic differently. We like that. So you're legitimate. Don't be afraid to apply. Go for it.
But I'm hearing a common theme here. Stay on top of your portfolio. Make sure you're adding to that portfolio and you know, making it nice, and any works you do, add it, like, so people can see your talent. That's important.
Yes. Yes, and I saw, if I'm talking about the gaming world, when I talk about portfolio, if yourself right now, you're engaged into gaming community, you're doing modding, for example, put it on your portfolio. We like that. It might not be a professional, like maybe you haven't worked yet for a video game company, but if you have been modding for years, be a leader of a gaming community, that's important, right? So that's part of your portfolio, okay? So don't hesitate to share that, because it's all about showing up your skill, and your skill you may have use them in a professional context and some other not yet.
Awesome. What else do we have, Natalie?
Okay. So another question that we have here is, what advice would you give to school counselors or people in the school system to pass on to their students who might have an interest in a gaming career, but aren't sure where to go with their post-graduation education?
Oh,
That's a good one.
yeah. Okay. So there are two kind of things, and I'm not always very familiar with the US system, so apology in advance for our US audience, but I think you can go two roads. There is a traditional university system, and of course, computing, computer science is one direction. So the traditional university system, you go computing, you go design, you go art, you have the classical, you know, courses. Then on the side, you might have specialized video game school. That may exist. It's another path. But try it. I mean, and it's not because it's not working in the, you know, what does matter ultimately is your ability to practice game development. So try a courses. If it does not fit you, you can try another one. You might find other ways to practice and develop your skill. So look around. There's more and more training around gaming that develops. So there is choice. And if you cannot go through those courses there's still a way to enter. You know, to be honest with you, one of our objectives, but we're not there yet, is for the years to come to be able to propose something alternative. And I'm going to tell you one thing about the education system. It's not very inclusive, right? So when you're neuroatypical, or even when you're from a minority, usually we're having a hard time at school. School needs to do better. Universities need to do better, really. And that's also an area to work on. So if you're currently a student and so on, you know, if you have the will to stand up a little bit and to fight for your community, there's room to do it. This is what we've been doing at Ubisoft, and it is working. We have some work to do, but I think it is important to acknowledge and recognize that the current modern education system is not very inclusive, and they have to make effort. And we have to explore other avenues also, like other ways to learn.
I love that. We can be the agents of change within the environments, and just stand up and let them know that things need to change in the educational system. 100%.
And something, I think in the entertainment world, we all have stories, whether it is movie, TV series, cinema, video game. We have lots of stories of self-made individuals, you know, who started in a small job as assistant, as tester, and progressively they had the opportunity to practice, to be in a professional context, and to experience other jobs. I think it's a fairly valid way to enter an industry that we may have forgotten, and we need to reignite again, facilitate again. So that's why also I think, especially for the gaming industry, like your hobbies, if you are gaming in your hobby, you're doing stuff, that's important. So I go back to, I like to repeat myself, Rebecca, right? Work on your portfolio, don't lose faith, stand up, try different topic. It's not because you're not going through computer science that you won't be a great programmer. I have in my mind right now a French colleague in our Paris studio with an awesome technical art director. He's been kicked out of, I don't remember how many schools. He failed schools miserably.
Mm.
But as he used to say, what saved me is video game.
Mm.
So he found his way ultimately. It has been tough,
Mhm.
yes. But he didn't lose his center of interest. He worked on it. And then he practiced. It's one of our tech art director who did absolutely all the art job function in the company.
Mhm.
He tried them all, and that's the way, you know, he developed and acquire skills. So it's a valid way.
So we have some actors and some voice actors in the audience. Do you have any advice for them on how to break into the gaming industry as a voice actor or a character actor?
Good question. A bit too technical for me, so I can't answer. But we're regularly using voice acting. So yes, stay close to our development studio. And I don't know exactly how the system is working. So sorry not to be able to answer that. I will try to bring you back an answer later, talking to the right people.
Perfect. And we will get that out to the community. Thank you for that. So, you know, we're wrapping up in time, and, you know, we have about 5 minutes left. So Pierre, any last words that you just want to say to the group of people who have joined us today and taken their time to hear you speak?
Yes, absolutely. Let me think. I think that there's two messages. There's a message for, globally speaking, to say to any companies around the world that I strongly believe that the future of work is neuro-inclusion. You know, we're living in a very uncertain world right now. And the best way to face an uncertain world and navigate an uncertain world is to be able to welcome neuroatypicality.
Mm-hmm.
You need people today, I think, more than ever. We need people who can think outside of the box. And we need, on the other side, people who accept and know how to collaborate between neurotypical and neuroatypical and connect together. And I think neuro-inclusion is the key, because it is all about understanding how the human brain is working and respecting, you know, understanding that the singularity of human and human brain, and that your best interest as a collective is to respect that, to try to leverage the talent and skill. That's the first thing. Taking the neurodiversity angle and the autism angle, ADHD angle, dyslexic angle, is also, I think, very can be a teaching moment for our executive. Because, you know, when we talk about neuro-inclusive good practice applied on ADHD, autistic, dyslexic, the results are spectacular. And the good practice, what are they? They are already known. It's strengths-based management. It's active listening. It's building up psychological safety in your team. It's asking proactively people their preference in terms of communication, collaboration, and feedback. It's basic stuff, but you know, when you light them under the lens, with the lens of neurodiversity, you can show how impactful can be some accommodation, success enabler. Like, if you enhance an individual who is sensitive to light, and you cater for them an environment where the light will be the right one, the result you'll get out of it will be awesome. Mm-hmm. And it will be beneficial for everyone else. So that's a message for companies. You want to be disruptive, so stop going to conferences and say you are disruptive. Do it. And to do it, you need to roll up your sleeve and learn how to welcome people who are thinking differently from you.
Thank
And the
you.
second message is for our community. There's nothing wrong about us, right?
Yes.
So we're not broken and we are not alone. I'm so pleased to have been invited by Autism in Entertainment. Yes, I am on the ADHD side, but I mean, we are not alone. That's awesome, you know, that we can stand up. We are a very large group. There are so many initiatives around the world right now popping everywhere that needs to be more known. So yeah, it's we're not alone and we're not broken.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. I really appreciate it. This has been an incredible first webinar. Thank you. Just a few more announcements. Please visit our Autism and Entertainment website. You'll see a lot of great content, and we're adding it to, everydayautismandentertainment.org. And then we are going to have another webinar on June 13th at noon Pacific time, and it is the smaller employers and neurodiversity webinar. So we're going to give a lot of valuable information to smaller employers, and we welcome all of you to come to that webinar as well. Your participation is so valued, and thank you for your questions. And Pierre, I hope we stay in touch and continue our conversations, because this is innovation.
Thank you, Rebecca. It was a pleasure to be with you all.
Thank
and
you.
Happy to connect with you all. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you. And that will conclude it.
Yeah.